Greetings, everyone. It's Seven from the UK, and I'm coming back for a part 4 on our series. I haven't titled it yet, but it's definitely going to be the elephant in the room, or the elephant in society, and we're addressing SRA, which is Satanic Ritualistic Abuse. Basically, this is what we're all suffering from. You know, everything we're seeing, and we have Mark Steele, who is a 5G weapons expert, a brilliant human being, a wonderful friend, and I'm really grateful to have him on the platform today. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good. Well, good soldiering on, fighting the good fight.
That's right, that's right. Now, you had some really alarming information to share regarding what's happening in the Congo, what's happening with the children being enslaved in terms of, is it the electric cars you were saying, and cobalt? I'm not even familiar with that. So share with us the information you've uncovered.
Right, a number of the mines which are owned by the let's say the elites, the royal family, etc., own a number of cobalt mines in the Congo and other parts of Africa where they're basically scavenging, some of these precious, semi-precious metals out of Africa. Africa is a basket of, so rich, with a basket of minerals, precious metals, semi-precious, etc. And there's this massive requirement for cobalt. And cobalt is, taken out of the ground. There's large mines down there, but there's also a lot of child slave labor. So where we see lots of child slave labor, where they're basically forced into these horrific mines, where that with the labor, all day, and there's nobody talking about it. There has been some in the mainstream media, but what I'm quite concerned about is, where are Extinction Rebellion in relation to this? Where's Extinction Rebellion in relation to the toxicity? The mining in Africa of these heavy metals is extremely dangerous to the environment. There's no talk about it. It's ignored. And the people who live there are going to suffer, serious cancers, detrimental health effects. We've got the child slave labor going on. We've got all these horrific things, and nobody's talking about it. There's no reference to it. Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion. Everybody's talking about, other issues and not addressing one of the most horrific issues going on in Africa at the moment. The attack on the environment, the attack on the children in particular, and basically slavery. We fought against slavery for so many years, and this thing's, it's just proliferated right across the African continent in relation to delivering these metals, these materials for these elites. So we've got these elitist groups who are forcing these children into labor to get their hands on these materials so that they can build electric cars for the West. And everybody can pretend that, they're environmentally friendly. It's the exact opposite. But what I cannot get my head around, some of this stuff has actually been in the mainstream press. Where are these so-called activists?
But they're not real, are they, Mark?
No. Yeah, well,
they're not real. Extinction Rebellion and Black Lives Matter's got nothing to do with the protection of we as Black people. I want to introduce our sister here. Greetings, Sister Lauren. It's a pleasure to have you join us today. How are you doing?
Oh, fair, partly cloudy. How are you?
Wow. Can you just make sure that your mic is turned up fully, because I want to hear everything you've got to share as well. We've got Mark Steele, who is a fantastic weapons expert on 5G and so many technologies, and he's just sharing with us the whole situation that's going on with cobalt. Is it cobalt mining in Africa? And children are being pushed into child slavery. But you see, the whole targeting program is actually slavery. If we look at it, it's an exploitative, violent, abusive, terrorist slave trade that is taking place. And that's what the whole thing is. If we look at 15-minute cities, net zero, ULEZ, it's all coming down to the point of slavery. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Absolutely. It's all about control. I mean, the push for electric cars. We've got the Mayor of London putting radar we know causes cancer. There's been several studies. These are very powerful transmitters all over London where they're increasing the toxicity in air. So they make the air toxic to breathe. They cause breathing difficulties, but also these are so they can scan your vehicle. Police officers using handheld radar guns many years ago used to see the cops with these handheld radar. The emission used to bounce off the vehicle and hit the bounce back and hit the copper. The coppers all started getting cancer, so they had to stop them doing it. So that's why they put them in the backs of vans. And now we've got even more powerful radar scanners on these lampposts as you're traveling into these so-called ultra-low emissions, clean air. They're making the air absolutely lethal with radiation. It is lethal. It is sterilizing. And it's forcing people, a lot of people foolishly, who are getting into these electric vehicles that are developed, designed, and brought to market through child slavery in Africa and the destruction of the habitat and environment in Africa to bring these heavy metals, to develop these batteries, to bring to these vehicles, which those vehicles themselves, the varying magnetic field causes cancer and also will sterilize the children. So you can see where the whole electric car plan is to cause sickness and ill health. We've seen an epidemic in cancer. Under 50s now, there's an epidemic in cancer. There's also an epidemic in diabetes. Both of these sicknesses can be attributed to electromagnetic radiation pollution. And we've got the Mayor of London who's falsifying, saying to people, we need this clean air so that people can breathe. You won't breathe easily in an area in London where you've got all of this ubiquitous radiation. I've measured the radiation levels in London. They are absolutely catastrophic and also in breach of the international law. The Council of Europe 1815 resolution, the International Criminal Court say the maximum I can expose a human to for long term is 200 millivolts per meter squared. I was measuring up to 18,000 in London. Wow. 18,000. We were measuring, I was just doing some videos the other day outside of King's Cross Station at about 8,000. I was standing at Trafalgar Square measuring 9,000 and 10,000, and I've measured measurements up as high as 18,000. And the Council of Europe say that you should be exposed to no more than 200. And the actual science says it should be no more than 30. So we've basically got the Mayor of London cooking the people in London to death. Wow. That's where the temperature is coming from. If I blanket coverage an area with massive amounts of radiation, I cause increase in temperature, I cause the increase in fire risk. So where we saw Grenfell Tower was actually a smart meter fire, where smart meters had been installed in the building, which they then caused fires in appliances in that building, which then obviously, as we know, there was this massive fireball, vaporized a lot of the people in the building, where they would just be absolutely incinerated, where there'd be nothing left. So where there was large numbers of people who, everybody knew people who were in Grenfell that just disappeared. They were vaporized, and it's because of massive amounts of radiation. I mean, think about it. You get a multiple occupancy, everybody's got Wi-Fi, they've all got deck phones, they've all got mobiles, you've got this external radiation, and then you install smart meters, which are extremely powerful. All that microwave radiation energy has to go somewhere. So where does it go? It goes into hydrocarbon-based materials, timber, door frames, the polystyrene that was in the cladding. It starts to break it down. So you start to see what's called gassing off. So it starts to gas off. And then as soon as you get an ignition, an element or a device or, a cooker blows up or a fridge bursts into flames, you've got yourself well, what we saw in Grenfell Tower. We saw a towering inferno on the back of that whole building was primed due to the electromagnetic radiation pollution. It causes major problems, and it's like these electric vehicles. They're bringing these electric vehicles into cityscapes. They may as well be dirty bombs. I saw an electric vehicle exploding in Milan, centre Milan.
We saw that.
Continually
You sent me that.
exploding.
I think I saw that from your page. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. Well, that
I've seen. I mean, two of my family members perished inside Grenfell Tower, so it has particular significance to my heart. You know what happened to the people, and the fact that nobody has been held to account for the scale of that atrocity. And you know, we did a crime report which showed all kinds of irregularities, from you know the doors being exits being shut from the inside, water being turned off so that people couldn't you know flood their own buildings and protect themselves. There's so many things. The thing about the insurance, 3 months before they changed the insurance company to include human casualties, because the original insurers didn't, they insured the Grenfell Tower building, but they didn't actually insure for the people that were living in there. And so that was changed 3 months before. And there's a lot of irregularities for which we did a crime report. And as members of a family whereby we knew people that died, this was what motivated us to do the report, the crime report, and just point out all the irregularities and all the laws that had been breached. And in fact, nothing has been done in terms of that crime report. It's not been admitted, it's been covered up. And, you know, as you know, what's happening to me, I'm literally having to flee from city to city because we're seeing the same criminal cartel that we flagged up within these crime reports. And I have two major crime reports. One is the Farrell report, which was done by Tony Farrell in regards to 7/7, what took place in 7/7. And then obviously we've got the second report, which is to do with Grenfell Tower, because two of my family members died. And I am being literally terrorized by the very same criminal cartel. So we've had to put out their information everywhere because they're trying to kill everybody. And it is on a level that we, as the recipients of abuse, regardless of country, regardless of where we are, we have to start coming together as communities to address these issues. So, you know, Mark, what's your, because we have to, I mean, there's the scale of the abuse that's coming at us left, right, and center. We've got the electronic trafficking, we've got targeting of individuals, which is involving gang stalking, domestic terror. We've got what's happening to children all over the place. What say you in terms of the solutions right now, Mark?
Well, it's one of the solutions that we have. We're currently writing to local authorities. We've got a document on the Save Us Now website where we're writing to councils and we're saying to them, look, since 2019, you've basically went full terrorism on the population, and therefore anybody who's paid them any monies in between that are asking them for the money back. Now, the reason they're doing that, we've had a lot of people who just stop paying their rates. So they send them the documents, because you see under the terrorism laws, it's actually a criminal offence to fund terrorism.
That's
and
right.
We can prove that your local authority, they have went full terrorist on the people, where they're pushing this globalist net zero agenda. I can actually show you the defence industry have full control of the weather by 2025. They use ionospheric radiators and stratospheric aerosol injection. So the whole climate change thing is a hoax. That's a fraud and deception. So your local authority is taking money from you, through fraud and deception, so that they can then bring in these 15-minute cities for the extermination of you, your family, your friends, your countrymen, women and children. That's what they're planning. So we don't pay them. So what we do is send them this document. Now, what actually happened when we first sent them out was about 2 years ago. The council just ignore. They just don't come knocking at the door. They don't send bailiffs. They just stay away. Well, that wasn't good enough. So what we've now done, we've got a very similar document with all of the relevant documentary evidence. We'll send it to the council, but what we'll say to them is, I've been paying you for the last 2 to 3 years. Because I know now that you're domestic terrorists, I want this money returned. So you send them an invoice for the monies that you've paid, and then you take them to the small claims court and they've got to defend it. See, previously, I mean, there's one girl in Northumberland pays an awful lot of money in taxation. She owes the council about 170 or 180,000 pound in back rates. They were paying them for 2 years. She sent the documents. The council just stayed away. She had some bailiffs come to the door once, just to, like sort of check the place out, and she rang the police and said, I've got men come here to threaten with menaces to take money to fund a terrorist organisation, which is actually the local council. So that then she stopped that in its tracks. She contacted the bailiffs company, because you see the problem that they've got, if let's say somebody did come to try and take goods away, a bailiff, and let's say somebody got hurt, then they'd have to show in court, right, why they were doing that. And if somebody did get hurt, which would be an assault charge where you'd get a jury, we could bring into that court the fact that this assault occurred due to the council trying to obtain money by deception and fraud to fund domestic terrorism against the population. It's a minefield for them. So they're not going to come. And that was the purpose of us now, over the last few months, we've been sending invoices to them. There's a protocol, how you do it, send your invoices. So that's what we're doing. It's basically to alert them. I was actually in a council office last week, and the planning officer, they've put there was a 5G mast going up in a place called Hazelrig, not far from me.
Right.
The parish council have stated it can't be installed, so they've denied the planning. The main council, Newcastle City Council, they've denied its installation and said that they wouldn't allow it to be installed. So it had its planning refused. The company, Hutchinson's Wampua, which is a Chinese part of the Chinese defense industry, they've come along and just installed it. They've then applied back to the council. The council said, well, we said you couldn't have it. And they've applied back to the council. They've applied back to the council to request, right, retrospective planning, because they've ignored the planning decision. They refused it to be installed, and they've just come along and installed it. And then they've went back and then asked for retrospective planning. Now, I was in the planning office and I was talking to the officer, and I said, look, the British government have told you not to take into consideration the environmental and health effects from a radiation transmitter, basically a battlefield-derived technology, which we know in all the science causes cancer. I said, do you not have alarm bells ringing? The fact that the government have told you you can't carry out an environmental impact analysis in breach of the primary legislation, which is basically do no harm. So the government are telling you to break the law. I said, is the alarm bells not ringing? Do you not think there's something suspect about a technology that we know causes ill health, and you've been told by the government you can't assess the environmental impact? I said, that is just absolutely outrageous. And I said, not only if you do ignore it, you are breaking the law. There was a Brighton and Hove case where the High Court in London stated they must carry out an environmental impact analysis. The reason why the councils can't, is because 5G will fail. It'll fail all of the environmental impact analysis. A very powerful, energy-hungry technology, and they spray massive amounts of radiation. I went on to say to the guy, you're terrorizing the population. Nobody believes the government. They're pathological liars. They've always been wrong. They were wrong about asbestos. They lied about contaminated blood products. They lied about weapons of mass destruction. They lied about thalidomide. They're just pathological liars. And the only time when they tell the truth is when the body count is too much and they can't deny it. And what we're seeing today, since the 5G switch on in 2019, there's an extra 250,000 people, an extra 250,000 people are dead. There's an extra 500,000, so 500,000 extra are claiming full-time sickness. And you know yourself how difficult it is to get sickness benefits today. They're kicking lots of people off getting sickness benefits as fast as they possibly can. And they've got this stratospheric. This started in 2019 before the pandemic.
Yes, but Mark, I will take you back to 7/7, which was 2005. And that's actually when we have our report from Tony Farrell, which shows 100% terrorism upon the population and what took place in that incident. And, you know, I recommend that everybody look at the Tony Farrell report, which is on farrellreport.net, and you'll see categoric, damning evidence that the people in the UK have been terrorized since then. Now, I want you to speak on what happened to Beth's situation yesterday, Mark. But first, I want to bring in Lauren, because Lauren is a targeted individual. She's in the USA, and it's very important for us to hear what is taking place across the water. Now, my sister, I know that you have had some horrific things happen to you of late. Just give us an overview of your personal situation. And you're in the USA. What part of the USA are you in?
I'm in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's the home of RJ Reynolds, which is probably or at one time was national. So it's a tobacco company, which you all can just remember that. RJR Company is and has always been the number one company here in the state of North Carolina. As far as my targeting is concerned, I believe I fell up under the MK Ultra, which we're now calling it targeted individuals Havana syndrome, which you all, I think, are aware happened back in 2016 with the diplomats in Havana, Cuba. And so these diplomats were targeted. Can you just explain
what happened there, Lauren? Because a lot of people will not know. And I want to know whether what Mark is saying is consistent with what a lot of the things that you're experiencing in terms of the technological side of what is being done to you.
Right. So, yes, all of it is basically 5G and surveillance, okay, coming from the satellite. Which puts all of us on watch because we're non-consensually being watched 24/7. And with the 5G, anytime I turn my phone on and get connected to the 5G, I start getting targeted. So I know that my phone has direct connection. It's like I'm connected to a electrical grid. My body continuously shakes 24 hours a day, nonstop. And I know that when I got shot back in 2021 of October, I was non-consensually implanted with a wire. Prior to that, I did have some implanted chips. I think they came in through and by some surgeries that I didn't have to have. And that's how I believe that I physically began to get these strikes to my body. And then the blow to my head, which initially caused me to have a nosebleed out of nowhere. And after that, I am being and have been being targeted with these directed energy weaponry ever since. And I think that started maybe back in 2019 is when I think I initially got hit with directed energy.
Now, Lauren, just your lighting is really bad. We can't see your face. We can only see that behind you. We can't actually see you clearly. That's much better.
Okay.
Better.
I was pointed toward the light, which is my window is right behind me.
Okay, that's much better. Thank you so much. We can see you a lot better. So is it consistent? Because Mark was talking about 2019 being significant in regards to the switch on of the 5G. Is that right, Mark?
The main blanket switch on of 5G came in 2019. There were test beds Gateshead was one, Bristol was another. We had Sheffield. There was a number of test beds around the world, different countries, but the main switch on was 2019. That's when they switched it on in Wuhan. Wuhan was the test bed, but it was the test bed for the vaccinated contamination to be activated using the direction of the radar and the directional weapon system of 5G. So where we saw the Chinese walking along and being shot, you know, where you're causing a tonic seizure, you just switch them off, switch their nervous system off. That was the weapon they tested on the Chinese in the 2019, which they said was coronavirus, which is just absolute horse bullshit. They were actually hitting them up.
I mean, most people were aware that it was absolute bullshit. So, Lauren, you're saying in that same period, you noticed that you were being attacked in some way, shape, or form. Is that correct?
But I think that I actually came under MK Ultra and COINTELPRO way before 2012. I would say I believe I came into the program around 2012 because a lot of things were happening unexplainably. But when I look back even further back into my young childhood, there was a lot of things that was happening to my body that I couldn't, just a lot of things happening, period, that I could not explain as a child. So I would say I was possibly born into the program. And just talking to some specialists today, one was a forensic specialist. She does like the scan. She can tell exactly where your body has been hit with directed energy. She's done a scan for me, which I haven't paid her yet for the written report. When I do finish paying for that, she will send me my written as well as my photos, which proves and can be proved in court that we are being targeted with directed energy weaponry. She actually herself is getting ready to file a civil suit against the government. I don't know if you all know anything about targeted justice.
Yeah.
Anna Toledo just filed a lawsuit back in January against the DOJ, the government as a whole, I'll just say, instead of listing everybody. And so we're waiting now to hear something with response to the government, which we may have to appeal if the judge does not approve them releasing the names of the watch list, which we all know we're on. So if we win this case in court, then they'll have to reveal the names of those who have been put on non-consensually put on this watch list. And then therefore, you know, you can start doing your own personal civil suits. But Anna Toledo is taking on, I think, 18 or 19 cases right now that are dead proven cases with all the evidence that she has to prove before the law judge. So she feels very certain that our names will have to be revealed and taken off of this watch list so that we can stop being targeted. My question, though, is will we really stop being targeted? Because there is so much money involved in this. These people literally want me dead. I have been shot at where I have 15 bullets in my legs, put out of the hospital so that it would not be proven that they actually took the bullet. And I do believe the bullets were actually taken out because I asked them to do surgery and remove them. They knew that if they did that it would be evidence proving that the bullets were actually had been taken out anyway. Okay, they don't want the evidence showing. So the hospital actually put me out of the hospital in a wheelchair where I had to go on a curve in the coldest of winter after having these open wounds in my body. And I sit on this curve for 6 solid hours in the coldest of December, which is very here in the United States, and left there. I was left on a curve after I had been shot. So, and then left there, and finally, after, you know, trying to get to another hospital, which is a whole nother story. And I believe before I left the original hospital, I was there implanted with the wire that goes from my feet up to my tailbone up my back to the top of my head, which here is where I know that a chip or that wire is connected, because this is where my hair has been burned out. It will not grow back.
Wow.
And I am constantly being beamed right here. And the perps have a reason for the right lobe side of your brain. I can't remember right now what it controls, but it does eventually burn your brain up, when that's what's happening to me. So it's been a number of things that have been going on. I've, just had to file a complaint with the city, Winston-Salem Police Department, because when I got shot in October 2021, no one asked me, no investigator ever asked me anything about my shooting. They then closed my case in March of 2023 without my knowledge,
Well,
calling
this
it a
is a
cold case.
consistent pattern in terms of people who are put on this list, like myself and so many
Right.
others. When something nefarious happens, like my cousin was murdered, there's been no investigation. Prior to his murder, we were asking for police protection, and basically we again and again and again said we are being targeted. And after I found him, he was found dead. Nobody came. It's now he died in March of 2019, and nobody up to this day has actually come to investigate what happened. They cremated his body without my permission, so that he couldn't have a proper burial. And he was very popular, he was very well known, so there was no proper funeral or anything. So it is a horrific situation, and it is part of a wider scope of what I'm starting to realize is satanic ritualistic abuse. It all comes under that same category. Now, I wanted to bring in Beth here, because Beth gave a testimony in the previous part, actually in part one, whereby she explained what is being done to her and her struggle to get her grandchildren back. Mark, you heard this testimony. What do you make of the whole situation? Because for her, she was talking about there seems to be a correlation with the wanting of rhesus negative blood. What is that about, Mark? Do you have any clue?
There could be any number of defense experimentation. At the end of the day, unless we know exactly who's behind this, it's very difficult to put a finger on it. But as you said before, these are satanic. We're dealing with cult members. We're dealing with cults who, for lots of different reasons, basically want to torture large proportions of the population. I mean, you only have to look at the electric car, the 5G, the torture, the tinnitus, the sore eyes, the bad heads. All of this stuff is all part of a torturous plan perpetrated on the population by criminals in government who tell you that these technologies are perfectly safe. It's just a total falsehood. It's a falsehood. As Lauren said, these directional weapon systems were used against embassy staff in Cuba. The first knowledge we have of weapons being used against embassy staff was in Russia, in the US embassy in Moscow. And the US government denied there were microwave radiation weapons. And unfortunately, what happened in Havana, they haven't been able to cover it up. They said it was ultrasound weapons. And now there's been an admission that it is microwave radiation weapons. These microwave radiation weapons are specifically 5G. The 5G technology, the main technical parameter is being able to focus energy in air at a target. That's what 5G is.
Okay, so we're going to have to come back for part 5. And Beth, I'm going to bring you in terms of what Mark has said and your personal battle right now. And also we want to hear in terms of how you are fighting back, Lauren, and some of the strategies that Mark can assist us with to deal with this, because it's warfare. What we're seeing, it's the different scales of warfare. The family is affected, as you've seen with Beth. with Lauren. I mean, I know, Lauren, you said something happened to your brother recently. We're going to talk about that and what Mark is talking about. It's all warfare. And we need to basically look at the strategies in terms of how we're going to come up against this. I know that Mark has a lot of documentation on his website, which is saveusnow.com. Is that right, Mark? Or .org?
Yes.
Is it .org.uk or .com?
It's .org.uk.
Okay, so Save Us
All right,
Now.
if I can just in a second, if I can just say really quickly, there is what you can look up any conference call, anything, updates of anything that's going on with TI. It's called tievents.org. I would like for you to go on, both of you actually, to go on and have your names added to the website so that people will know what's going on in the UK. I mean, this is what's going on here in the United States.
Right.
But we need to make the connection, okay?
Yes.
With other, other countries as well. So it's tievents.org, no spaces. If you all will please go on there and ask to join your website so that we too can make connections on what's going on in your country, then you will know what's going on here in the United States.
That's
and let
so
me just
important.
say at 8:30, Gaji's after dinner call, she does on Tuesdays at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, which is my time, but it will give your time too. She brings updates on what the lawsuit is, weekly updates on what the lawsuit is doing.
Right.
And so tomorrow there will be another meeting at 8:30 Eastern Standard. Again, if you all would just keep that in mind, go on and put your information so I can have an easy connection, and then I can lead others how to connect with you all over in the UK. Okay.
Right, that's great. Now we're going to
Yeah.
come back for the next part, part 5. Please tune in. Thank you for tuning into part 4 here. Please share this information with everybody you know, particularly those who are suffering right now, those who are targeted. Please follow Mark Steele on saveusnow.org.uk, and we're going to come back just after this break. Thank you.